Greetings, family. Good grand rising, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are watching us from in the world. Welcome to the Women in Political Leadership series. I am your host, Angela Asante-Armar, streaming live from Ghana and also digitally from the Power to Our Mothers Foundation Africa Facebook page, the United States of Africa Facebook page, and also the United States of Africa YouTube page. Do subscribe to the channel if that's where you're watching from. An extraordinary, a very special episode we have for you today, as we usually meet on Wednesdays. So apart from our awesome discussion with the guests we had yesterday, today I'm super excited. We have two guests joining us today, all the way from the USA. For those of you who are watching for the first time, the purpose of this show, this platform, is really to just open up the conversation about why it is that there's such an underrepresentation of women in the political arena, although the majority of the global population are women. So it's to look at all those issues and encourage, look at how we increase those numbers. So whilst I get into introducing our first guest, we will be joined by the second one shortly. Please do drop a comment and let me know where in the world you are joining from. And please prepare your questions now. We will try to deal with them. I'm sure we're going to have a lot. So I will try and deal with them as and when there's an appropriate place. But otherwise, we may arrange for them to be answered after the fact. So without further ado, my first guest on the platform at the moment is US 2020 Vice Presidential running mate, Claudeliah Roze. And as I'm saying, so she has been named as the running mate to Jade Simmons, who should be joining us shortly for this upcoming November US elections. I can just give you a snapshot of what she's accomplished because there is loads, but she's accomplished a 20-year plus career serving in positions of trust in aerospace, defense, and intelligence communities. She's naturally strategic and a dynamic team leader who effectively navigates politically charged environments to create alliances and solutions that benefit those at stake. Claudeliah is regularly consulted by senior and executive leadership within her company on critical matters that affect both the business bottom line and the culture of the organization. And please note, Claudeliah is currently the first African-American female technology director with a large aerospace and defense company. There's more. So throughout her 20-plus year career, Claudeliah has supported key defense and intelligence programs, serving in both the customers and the company's interests. She's deeply passionate about building diverse and high-functioning teams that serve people. Now, as Vice President of the USA, Claudeliah will cast a vision for revitalizing the United States' position as the most technologically advanced nation in the world, developing a hybrid model of manufacturing services and financial sectors to create more jobs, economic stability, and regain the USA's independence as a producer and exporter of goods, services, and policy. And last but not least, Claudeliah also has a history of professional excellence, which has earned her national recognition as a Black Engineer of the Year, Modern Day Technologist in 2019. And this is an award which recognizes an individual's commitment to shaping the future of engineering, science, and technology. In addition to highlighting all of these highlights, the prestigious award focused on her passion for developing diverse leaders that will evolve the face of technology. So please do give Ms. Claudeliah Roze a warm virtual welcome to our platform today. Welcome, Sister Claudeliah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I can't tell you how much joy it brings my heart to be in this same virtual room as you, and to be in this just this sisterhood and this community. I am just thrilled. It has been literally a desire of mine since I was in high school, and reading so much about our motherland and what's happening there. It has been a dream of mine to become more engaged. And so I'm so excited to do this. I want to thank you and the Global Pan-Africanism Network for inviting us and for using your platform to give us a voice and to amplify our voices and what we are working to accomplish even in the United States. Thank you so much.
Oh, wonderful! It's such a pleasure to have you, and it's a critical time because the U.S. elections are just around the corner, so it's going for taking up such high position. But if I can say, as a background question, like what is it that sparked your interest in politics in the first place?
Yeah, that's a great question, Angela. So, we obviously had a little time to talk before this. I'll say up front, my background in and of itself is not political, but that's actually something that I'm very proud of, because I feel that my background as an American citizen embedded just so much in our everyday culture and connected so much to the lives of everyday American people. I actually think is a benefit that it has given me experiences that I believe enable me, and I think Jade will say the same thing, that enable us to understand the plights of the everyday American citizen and how we can make those better. So what really motivated me to take this position, I'm sure it's been seen all over the world, but racial tensions are at an all-time high in the United States. Um, Even within my professional career, it has been a passion of mine to understand how do we diversify our professional landscape? How do we make sure that populations that have been historically underprivileged and underrepresented, and I want to say and not really even listened to when the major decisions are being made, how do we make sure that those individuals have a voice? How do we make sure that they're at the table and that their interests are being fully represented when decisions are being made? So this has been something that I've done in my community, in my profession for many years. When I saw this now happening at a national level, and honestly, Angela, issues that we've been pushing under the rug for many, many years and we have not addressed in their totality, now taking again a forefront. To me, what was loudest to me is that there are voices. There are messages that people within this democracy, their voices are not being heard. Their voices have been silenced for a very long time. They've been bulldozed over. And it's time that there is a louder voice to represent what we call kind of this muted middle. And a large part of that is, the America that was formed. And at that time that it was formed, it really didn't take into account much people of color. It really didn't allow women to have a loud voice at that time. There was a particular demographic that drove those decisions, but we are no longer in that place. We're no longer a country that can only be represented, I'll say, by the white males. There is a much greater, much more diverse population with interests that are sometimes not taken into account and that even may be at odds with the majority. But it's time that those voices are heard and that we work to create an America, that we work to restore an America that really does that listens to the voice of their people. And that's really what we're aiming to do. So when Jade initially started to put together that vision of restoration, of restoring America to the America that we intended for it to be, even though we didn't take into account all those voices, but this is really where we want to be. It was a no-brainer for me. I knew it was going to be a sacrifice. I knew that it was going to be not popular, and already we have just encountered immense opposition and oppression and suppression, but it's something that we believe in so much.
That's amazing. it gives a very good background. And I know before we went live, we were talking about the fact that I was actually shocked to learn that there are over 1,200 independent presidential candidates, if I believe that's correct, contesting in this upcoming election. What does that say to you about the climate at the moment in the US?
Yeah. So, I need to do a little bit more research, but I believe that this is, if not the highest number of other presidential candidates that we've had, it is certainly one of the highest that we've had in recent years, and even more so in the history of the United States. What I believe this is calling for is calling for change. It's calling for change that we have not addressed before. It's making a statement that how we have lived and how we have acted before is no longer in the best interest of the majority of American citizens, and that there's a call for change. It's not just a change for, I think, for frankly getting rid of our two-party system, but I think it's also asking for change within our social constructs, that individuals who have been disenfranchised for so long, they're saying that even though there have been promises that have been made, even though there have been acts that have been set forward, they are still not producing the results that the majority of Americans want to see. And so whereas it's been a time of turmoil and obviously a lot of tension for the United States, I think it represents great opportunity for us to pivot and to reinvent ourselves as the democracy that we've said that we've always been. We've always said that we are democracy, that we are of the people, by the people. And so when the people are asking for change, when the people are asking that we no longer prioritize political agenda, we no longer prioritize profit, but now we actually prioritize people, we have to listen to that.
Absolutely. There's so much that was in there, but I'm conscious that we are now joined by Ms. Jade Simmons. So guests, please prepare to welcome Jade to the platform. But first, I want to give you a bit of background in case you don't know what is up. So Jade Simmons has led a life marked by innovation and reinvention. As a world-renowned classical pianist, top-ranked transformational speaker, and business leader, she's driven by a desire to influence and inspire people to be the biggest, boldest version of themselves possible, the version of themselves that stands to make the most impact. Jade intentionally partners with purpose-based companies and organizations who have a track record of prioritizing the people who work for them and the customers they serve. From kids to corporate, with leadership, college audiences, women's groups, arts, and faith-based programs in between, the result is always the same. Jade gets people to bring more of themselves to every single table, every single time. And Jade is set up to do the same as president, fostering a new era of purpose-based public-private partnerships, unlike the merely one-sided transactional deals they're used to. She believes America has a unique calling and a powerful destiny. Jade believes in America First policies, but not in isolationist practices that keep America from being the true world leader it was destined to be. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, please would you give a warm virtual welcome to Jade Simmons. Greetings, Sister Jade. Good to have you on the platform.
Thank you so much, Angela, for having us. It's really a privilege to be here.
Oh, our pleasure. On behalf of Our Mothers Foundation Africa and Global Pan-Africanism Network, whose vision is to create a United States of Africa. So you are officially welcomed.
Thank you so much.
What you walked in on before was I had asked Claudeliah. Well, I commented that I was surprised that there were so many, like over 1,200 at the last count, independent presidential candidates, and so I was asking what that signals about where the US is at now. So if I ask you I'll ask you the same question first, as in, what is it that interested you in politics in the first place?
Yeah, you know, the number that you mentioned, that over 1,200, that may be the highest, but the truth is there are always numerous candidates for president every 4 years. And the way that our politics is set up in the US, we have been trained now to only look for someone coming from the right or the left. Now, in those 1,200, there are varying degrees of seriousness. If you dug deep, you'd find some people running on the platform that cats should run the world, right? You'll find sort of levels of ridiculousness. But at the top of that, you'll always find about 4 or 5 serious candidates who really see themselves as leaning into the void of leadership that we have in our nation. And when we talk about a void right now, I believe we have a chasm. And I think it says a lot about us that after 4 years, these other varying demographics, other social groups haven't done their work to raise up a candidate who they feel would at least serve their needs. And so what's been exciting for me, I wouldn't say that I'm trying to go into politics, as wild as that sounds. I'm trying to operate in the highest level of servant leadership possible. So you can imagine, Angela, they always ask, what's it like running as a Black woman? Do you know that you guys both would be the first, African-American women? And me and Claudeliah have been joking. We haven't even had the time to kind of sit back in the historical nature of that. And I think that's owed to the fact that that's not the reason we run. We run because we truly believe we have solutions for this era that politics as usual is not going to give us. So we're trying our best to be the best non-politicians ever, applying for the highest office in the land.
Yes. I applaud that. And I share that with you. I was saying to Cordelia earlier that exactly, I absolutely resonate with what you say about you're not trying to be a politician. It's the same reason why I said that I've recently relocated to Ghana from the UK, born and bred, and that I had already announced my intention to contest for presidency in Ghana, not because I had any prior background in politics, but literally because it was really time to have the mother's voice to take care of the country, So absolutely, I applaud that. I'm sure other women and men listening will applaud just that it's not time or it's time not to continue the story that, politics is for the men, or there are any number of reasons that we shouldn't be in there. And I think it also just really humanizes politics. Like politics is about people at the end of the day. And Claudia was making that point earlier, and you've just now beautifully summarized that. Yeah, it's about the people. Yes, there's a structure, there's policies, there's this and that, but ultimately it's about the life of people. So we definitely place there.
I would take a praise break right here, Angela, because one of our prayers has been that we knew we weren't the only ones feeling this way, not just in the US, but around the world. And so our prayer has been that in this season, uncommon, unexpected leaders with service on their heart, who will bring uncommon policies that are powered by the actual needs of people and not political rhetoric, would begin to arise. So we've been saying New America arise, and I really believe it's a new world that's arising, and that leaders now will come from these places where they have lived, where the people they're about to serve are currently living. And I think that's going to change the entire climate of leadership. I get chills just imagining being able to be in office at the same time as you and being able to work on U.S. relations. I just, that's exciting to me. So congratulations.
Thank you. Absolutely. And one of the purposes of this platform is literally to have the open discussion, looking at why we are where we are, as in why it is that, in 2020, we still have such an underrepresentation of females in politics, when history tells us, history before perhaps colonialism, imperialism, tells us that we were present in everything. So in that context, what are some of the perhaps challenges you feel that you have faced stepping up to do what you are doing right now that you would associate with you being women? Can you speak a little about that?
Yeah, you know, that's the ironic thing, and I'd be curious to compare notes, Angela, later, you know, offline. But our biggest hurdles have had nothing to do with us being females. That's what we expected. We expected chauvinism, right? We even expected racism. And what we probably have faced the most is the sheer fear of Americans that either the current president will remain in office or that Joe Biden will take office. And when I tell you that the fear is so palpable, we have people who admit to our faces they love our policy, they love our vision. We wish they would come to us and argue over healthcare. The only argument they have is you're going to split the vote. You're going to disrupt what we're trying to do. And the media itself, it's why we're so thankful. I'm sure Claudeliah has already told you about the media shutout that we face. So these platforms have become so important and so pivotal because they are simply voices saying there's another story to be told. And so even the media, local politicians don't want to associate with us, not because we're women, not because we're Black, but because we are independent. So they don't want to risk being associated with someone outside of their party. And we'll even have suggestions, solutions for the city they're in. They would prioritize their loyalty to their political party than before they do to the people. And you know, we see this in Africa and many of the nations, the corruption we see at the highest levels of government, where none of what's happening at the top is trickling down to the people. And the real fight is about the retention of power. And so that has been our biggest, I think, thing we face. Now, I will say something ironic, and Claudeliah may want to add on to that. I think we've probably gotten more chauvinism from women. More chauvinism from women. And I heard someone say, well, that's a byproduct of chauvinism, of colonialism, and all these things. And I get the, you know, the spiritual, emotional conversation there. But in the natural, what we have experienced is more doubt and accusation by what we believe are women who simply haven't seen it done before. And so there's such a level of fear and cynicism built up that there's suspicion cast on our motives and intentions. And so we actually welcome the opportunity to be in office and serve even the people who were suspicious of us in the beginning.
Absolutely. I want to add on to that, Jade. When Sister Angela and I had our conversations before we were going live, and before she even mentioned that she was going to be running or seeking the Ghanaian presidency, I noticed that there was this kindred connection that just happened right away, almost like, you know, her eyes have been open to the possibilities.
Yeah, and that's it.
But she was open also to her identity as a world changer and as a servant leader. And so there was just this immediate connection that I really couldn't describe it. So then when she announced then that, you know, I'm also seeking to serve, you know, my nation in the greatest capacity as well, I thought, you know, that I loved it. I loved it.
Not coincidence. No coincidence here.
Exactly.
I just want to reaffirm what you're saying in terms of the fact that the most chauvinism you received was from other women, and it's just good to observe that this is not unique to any one type of nation, anything, and it shows you that it doesn't matter that whether we're in a developed nation or a developing nation, the sisterhood, the women, the mothers, as a collective, there's a weak link, you know, that we are working to. That we're working to repair. So I'm glad that you can just see it as the symptom, as opposed to, because some people would get really het up about it. And it is what it is for now. But the more of us that can step up, and the more of us not only step up, but the more of us that can spread the message that there's more than one place at the top.
That's right.
Message,
That's right. That's right.
I think,
and I think that's what's been so powerful for Claudeliah and I to run together. Because visually what it looks like is we have doubled down in all areas, right? We've doubled down in being women, and being Black women, also in being women of faith and non-politicians. And we're not apologizing for it. You know, I see one of your viewers, Joy, says women leadership is needed in all areas. And what I'm realizing, it's It's simply that well-rounded leadership is needed, and women are accustomed to having to be so many different things to so many different people. We have to bring all of ourselves to every single table. And it just so happens the era we're in requires that multifaceted leadership. And women are uniquely built to serve in that way. If you look at the response of COVID-19, some of the best responses came from nations led by women. I don't think that's a coincidence.
Yes, look at New Zealand, for example, who is led by a female. And one of the things that I think that we have missed, we have lacked in America, is this decisiveness, is this ability by those in leadership to lay out a strategy, a plan for the country, and then allow each state or each municipality to customize it to their own. But what we're lacking, though, is that broad decision-making ability to lay out what the country needs. And so the leader of New Zealand, I was reading their story the other day, and I was so impressed. Like, from the very beginning, she said, this is what we're going to do. They only needed to be in lockdown for 7 weeks. And now they are actually on the path to completely eradicate COVID-19. So decisive action. She called in, her wealth of advisors and things like that immediately. I think the lack of arrogance, exactly, and being able to understand that we need the collective minds and innovation and ideas from our experts. And so she did that immediately. There was such a level of empathy that she expressed for the people in terms of, we cannot be in lockdown for forever. This cannot be a perpetual state, but we need to do something quickly. Maybe it might need to be extreme, but we need to communicate that well to the people so they understand where we're going, what our timeline is, and what to expect after that. And I've just been so impressed by her leadership.
Yeah, Jacinda Ardern.
Yes, exactly.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and she's one of, I think they named maybe 7 nations led by women, including Taiwan, maybe Germany, and they were, at least in the UK, they were trying to work out, so what is the difference? What is it that they attribute, to the reason, the main reason between why the women lead this way, or they've got those results compared to the men. And I think the jury may still be out, but one suggestion that was made that for me is like, it definitely is the winner, is the fact that generally as women, as mother figures, as mothers, our main priority as the bringers of life is the preservation of life.
There it is.
So we look at things
there it is.
in a way where it's like, well, yes, rationally, logically, everything, but how can we preserve this precious thing called life? That makes, total sense to me. And I think with what is going on in the world, both in the States, in Africa, the UK, in terms of some of this senseless loss of life that is going on right now, some that's been going on for a long time, whether it's among civilians, whether it's authority to civilians, shows us that, we've lost this appreciation for life. And actually the mother figures have to come back in and say, okay, enough now, enough fighting, enough killing. So that is awesome. What I would now like to for us to dig into a bit now is that, okay, so I know Claudelia had mentioned about connection with the motherland, and I mean, have either of you two ladies had the chance to visit anywhere on the African continent as such?
Well, that was the plan for me for January of this year.
Oh,
And then
we're well connected to some organizations there, mostly in Togo. And so my sister and I, we literally had it planned that we were visiting Togo this year. And so when COVID came, I thought my lifelong dream is evaporated before my eyes. But I sense that was not a lost opportunity, and I sense some even stronger connections and more tangible results that are coming soon. It's coming forward pretty soon.
Absolutely, yes. Corona hits, and some things lost, some things gained. Who knows? New perspective. And so when you look at, I love one of the videos I watched from you, Jade, is when you were talking, you were literally just breaking down very simply for people how you are going to be a president, and your administration really is going to be one that is an administration for all people. And it's not just a case of, you know, well, you're a Black woman, so you are only going to serve the Black community, or you're only going to serve the faith community, or, you know, those kinds of things. So when, but within that, obviously, because it's so symbolic, when you enter such a position as a Black woman, and your people, as it were, will have certain expectations. I know that you want to really forge some strong, or maybe stronger, bonds with Africa. So can you give us a bit of a insight as to what your administration plans to do to maybe improve the relationship between the US and Africa?
Sure. And let me start by saying, you know, you probably heard me said this in the interviews that you watched, is that I'm proudly would be a president to all people, but I would also unapologetically be a champion to underserved communities. And in the US, African Americans rank at the top when you look at that, Native Americans as well. And so you'll see specific programs and platforms that dare to address specific needs. So we have a whole plan called Breakthrough for Black America, because when you have 400 years of systemic injustices built in, at some point, you've got to systematically address those issues. So we do that. And, you know, we've suffered under the label of, oh, that's reverse discrimination or that's reverse racism. But we understand that what restoration and reconciliation looks like is you can't skip over the process of diagnosing what the issues really are, confronting the pain of those issues, and then putting forth real progressive policies instead of symbolism. We've got a lot of symbolism going on in America right now. They just named a street after George Floyd. We drive over MLK boulevards and past MLK museums everywhere you go. And I have to ask myself, would Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., be happy with the hundreds of roads named after him, or would he have wanted to see a different type of progress? Africa is another place that we have prioritized in many ways a symbolic relationship. You can see kind of three phases of our relationship with Africa. If you look at Cold War Africa, we just partnered with anybody who would partner with us against Russia. I don't care if they were war criminals, if they were leaders who had, committed atrocities against their own people. We played a role in partnering with those people because it was a means to our end. And then after that Cold War was done, our relationship began to change. But if you look at the way that Clinton interacted, you had more of a Africa as a threat, kind of a positioning that we saw there. And what you saw was, because he had to sell the value of engaging in relations to Africa, he sold it from a fear-based standpoint. If we don't address these bad issues in Africa, they are going to migrate over to our shores. Well, that already sets up a negative perception of what Africa is and who Africans are. Lastly, what I noticed is where I want to pick up from is I want to change the tone and the climate of our relationship with African nations. Right now, to me, it's not mutually beneficial and mutually respectful. Now, I can name, list a bunch of the money that we've spent in Africa. We can list the programs, the US aid, the war on HIV. But I think when you look at the undertone a lot, you'll see a nation acting out of obligation, not really valuing what Africa has to offer outside of its product, of its natural resources. And so I see a new relationship where you'll see a difference in how the people of Africa are valued. And, many of the contracts, not just with the US, with China, with Russia, with France, they're lopsided. Let's just be honest. They're lopsided. We get our end of the bargain very quickly. And Africa's in a contract, for 100 years without even the payoff that it needs. So a lot of our platforms domestically will mirror what we do internationally, which is to go back and look at where are their promises unmet, where are their obligations unfulfilled? Because if we're really a great nation, we've got to be a nation of our word. And then can we restore relationships so that they value and prioritize people first, and then that the relationships and contracts we get into show us to be fair negotiators who value the lives of generations of Africans to come.
Okay. Claudeliah, was there anything you wanted to add to that before I move on?
Gosh, I think I would foot stomp. There are a couple points that Jade talked about. But the other thing that I think is really important too is that historically we have seemed to approach Africa as almost this homogenous continent. And I think that the approach that I would love to take as well, and partnering with that, is that each country has its unique its unique benefits, the unique value that they bring to the table. And so in this context of still improving our relationships with Africa, I would love to see us dig a little bit more, a lot more, I'll say, into the unique relationships that we can have with each country.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I would tag onto that, our earlier initiatives could be argued that they weren't as wholehearted.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't as fully, we weren't as fully invested because the motivations were different. And let's not be naive, right? Every nation has its motivation and will always look to make sure they have a strategic advantage. But I think you can see a difference in how we've worked with African countries without having that clear target. We didn't have a clear enemy target like we did, back in the Cold War. And so I felt like our relationship began to be a little bit lukewarm. But I love what Claudeliah said about really taking this unique, diverse approach, which is what we're doing in the States, right? What are the unique needs of African Americans, the unique needs of the disabled, the unique needs of the military community, and then you serve accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot. I'm sure that there's a lot going on there. Of course, you have the police brutality happening in the US. We, across the continent, have our own versions. I'm sure you've heard of the SARS, the Special Anti-Robbery Squad in Nigeria. There's genocide happening in Ethiopia. There's also a lot of genocide that's happened in West Papua, in Indonesia. And what it makes me think is that, so there is, it's great that there is a real intention and desire to almost, redraw the relationship with Africa, the continent. And as you say, it is very diverse. It's a continent of 55 nations. And even within each of those nations, there are, diverse, how many different languages and everything. So I think it even sends a strong message that you recognize the diversity within the continent, because people will compare, they'll speak about China or a specific country in Europe, but they talk about Africa. And it's like, how many billion different types of people?
We don't approach another continent quite like that. We approach them on a country by country basis, and that's exactly how we need to do with Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited to hear you echo that too as well, Sister Angela.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because even within the United States, when we're facing racial tensions and racial relationships, you continue to hear the rhetoric, I'm colorblind, I don't see color. And while I understand the sentiment, what that also says to me is that you don't understand the unique experiences that certain demographics have endured and have had to come through. And you also don't understand the unique benefits and value that they bring to the table. And I think that's the same way that we've approached Africa. We've seen it as this continent of Black people that are all the same and have the same interests. And we no longer can do that. I think in doing that, we are dehumanizing the continent in a large way.
Yeah. Sister Angela, I had a question for you for my own knowledge.
Go ahead.
I know what I read and what I study, but in terms of police brutality, to me, the major difference in the US is that it's almost always a race-based issue.
Mm-hmm.
In African nations, because sheerly of what the population makeup is, the demographic is, I'm assuming much of the brutality is also Black on Black. So what does the discussion sound like in Ghana? Right? When you talk about police brutality, where is your focus? Where's the disparity that you guys are focusing on versus how we focus on race-based murders?
So we clearly are very in sync. The question I was going to say, or the comment I was going to make, was in the US, in the diaspora, the question becomes about race. On the continent, a lot of the conversation is about tribalism. It's our own version of racism. And a lot of the genocide that's happening now in Ethiopia is a really good example of that, where one ethnic group is being eradicated and nobody's talking about it. And you will have pockets like this around the different nations across Africa. So they may not call it out so openly, but I think it's like a one coin with two sides: racism over here, tribalism over there. And then you add to that, you know, the poverty, the desperation, if you like. Yeah. Of course, we talk a lot about corruption, but it's, yeah, you see, there are differences and there are similarities, which tell you, as diverse as people we are one and the same people, and we face a similar type of struggle wherever we are in the world. Wow. So this coalition, or it is essential that we really work on and improve this relationship that we have with Africa and the diaspora, be it the US, the UK, Canada, wherever else. So that's very encouraging. There are concerns for disparities, and I know you said you could list a whole load, but what comes to mind is, for instance, when we look across the continent of Africa and the sheer number of US military bases that are present on the continent, yet I don't, unless I call to be corrected, I don't think there's a single African nation that has any military base within the United States. Can you speak a little bit about why you feel there is that disparity and what your administration is going to do to address that?
Yeah, I from what I know, I think you're right. I don't think we could point to any counterexample over here. I think it goes back to that phase 2 as well that I'd mentioned, and I have to look back at dates to see what lines up. But stage 1 and stage 2 in our relationship with Africa, and then with Ghana specifically, I think, again, that mentality that there was something to guard against, something to protect against, and or something to make ours and benefit from. Now, this is not going to be popular discussion with many of my counterparts here in the States, but I think it's an important time to start being honest about the origins of our relationship. I said earlier that first phase of relationship really focused on us being able to use Africa strategically, military-wise, in order to be in a strategic position against what we saw to be our enemies. And I think what you're seeing are the remnants of that original viewpoint of how we saw you. That's a very usury mentality. And I believe most of the world has addressed Africa in that way. How can we benefit from them without then in turn having a wholehearted, heartfelt, genuinely empathetic, service-based perspective in how to move forward in relationships into the future? So I think you see a combination of things there. The original kind of using Africa's strategic advantage to the rest of the world, also being in reach of your resources, being in reach of your resources. I mean, let's just have a frank conversation here. And so I believe why women are making a difference in their leadership on the national and international level is because they are taking this honest approach. You said something earlier that I resonate with about why women succeed. And you mentioned the role of motherhood. And the instinct, even if you've never had a child, the instinct in women to protect and preservation in general. We don't just preserve the life. If we're in a home with multiple people, we're preserving the atmosphere, the peace. And we also know if one child feels less than, feels underserved, there will be friction in the home. So we go out of our way to diagnose what's going on with this child, what's going on with this child, what's going on with daddy over here, because we know, and then we have to do the work, which we sometimes neglect, of making sure we're okay as well. But I think that constantly dissecting and diagnosing, what do I have to do to achieve balance in this setting and create success for everybody involved? It's a very selfless approach. And I think it's rare to see it in leadership that comes from a dominant or dominance-based perspective.
Absolutely. And just another reason why, again, unapologetically, we say that more mother figures, more women need to be in this space to strike that balance, and that it makes no sense. I mean, we say it, and people like logically it makes perfect sense, but we're not living. We're living normalized insanity. So the fact that we have the minority that's making key decisions that impact the majority and wondering why we have such destabilization is fortunately what we are here to do, the work to speak up and encourage our sisters to, if they can't step out, then at least speak up in support of those who are stepping out. And not only the sisters, I'd say this before that, for those who, are very quick to pigeonhole this as women empowerment, yes, of course, there is that aspect. But as what you said, that I always resonate with Jade, in terms of basically the mother setting the mood, the temperament for the home. So it's like, once mom is fine, everybody else is fine. Like, it's a win-win.
Everybody's good.
Nobody leaves.
Think about parents, right? You don't want any of your children to die. You don't want any of your children to suffer. It is literally the default mode to preserve. And so you now put that in the highest office in the lands of nations around the world. That instinct remains. My instinct is not death, but it is life. Now, we all know, don't get it twisted, right? If we got to protect, we will protect too. We become mama bear and all that good stuff. So it's not that we don't have the fortitude to go toe to toe if we have to, right? Have y'all seen some of those memes on like TikTok where the mom's taking off her earrings on behalf of her daughter? Like, listen, what do we have to make happen? So we have it in us, but we instinctively understand that to go to war is already to lose. We've already lost if we've got to go to war. So just understand that. So that means let's stay away from that. Claudeliah can tell you in our foreign policy, it's how many different things can we exacerbate before even having to look at war as an option. Now, we get to war, we get there, it is what it is, it will be what it needs to be. And we still think you can go to war more compassionately than we've been going to war. You know what I mean? There's a better way to do even the hard, awful things. And we need the time to allow ourselves to explore the options. And that's not what you always see.
Thank you so much for saying that. It does remind me that, another benefit of having women in leadership, not to the exclusion of men, but a better representation of women in leadership, is that actually, yes, your wars will reduce, because we will solutionize. And like I said, that will be the last resort.
Such the last resort.
Yeah. So I just want to roll back and touch on some of the specific things that you said before, in terms of, recognizing that Africa is a continent of all these nations, and so is extremely diverse. And the fact that what we have seen in the past with some of the US foreign policy is this, if I just call it, this bulldozer approach to come in with culture or tradition that is not befitting for where Africa, the continent, the different nations are. And when I talk about that, it's the approach that is taken to even speaking about the LGBTQ cis community. I don't know if that's correct, but how do you intend to maybe approach highly sensitive issues like that? And I say, and I'm sure you know, they are highly sensitive because our cultural, as much as Africa is diverse, that seems to be one thing that at least the majority of the continent feels very strongly about. So how does your administration intend to address things like that?
Yeah, I think, and I'll let Claudeliah answer the bulk of this, but I would say that our instinct has been strip away first the label of the group that we're talking about, whether it's Black, LGBTQ, military. Strip away the label and start at the core of how do you serve the human. And what it does is it disarms you from your instinctive prejudices, which we all have, right? And so you then start from, okay, if I'm outraged about George Floyd's death, I've got to also be outraged about a transgender woman, even if I don't agree with her lifestyle. I don't get to project that on to how I serve her. If I'm upset about the stifling of the voice of people of Christian faith, I've also got to be upset about the stifling of the voice of Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
If I've got to, if I don't want to see the stereotyping of one, I've got to apply it. And what it does, it's so helpful because it forces you to put your personal preferences and leanings aside. And in our nation, that is what we need. You know, Sister Angela, I think about November 4th. What a gift it would be to our nation to wake up and not have to wonder whose side their president is on. Which side is going to get kicked hard because we won and we conquered you. Now we're going to spend 4 years revenge, right? And the other side then has to take a posture of opposition at all costs. Meanwhile, us people down here are like, can you serve us at any point, please? It'd be really great. You know, so Claudeliah, what would you say about just that approach to sensitive issues, how we've taken it before and what we would do with issues that, like you said, Angela, we're in different phases of acceptance of these things all over the world, right? Ireland is just now being able to have abortion in the way that they do. It's old hat to us. We're still fighting over it. We've been fighting over it for a long time, but it's brand new in other places. So Claudeliah, how would you look at that issue?
Yeah, I'm actually glad you brought that topic up, and I'm going to use the situation with the kidnapping of the young girls by Boko Haram that happened several years ago, right? So in the United States, we value ourselves, right, for fighting against things like sex trafficking, for making sure that we work to protect our young children. And so the world and the United States was outraged, obviously, emotionally, when we saw the kidnapping of these young women. What happened behind the scenes, though, and I think is extremely unfortunate, is that we had laws in place, though, that they're the Leahy laws, that said because of these laws, if we believe that a country is violating human rights, we then have the right to withhold military assistance in those situations. What that translated to in the situation with the Boko Haram kidnapping is that we were limited, and to some level we refused to provide additional military assistance because we didn't agree with some of your LGBTQ plus policies. Now, we understand that the way that Nigeria and Africa regards LGBTQ, it is not an issue of human rights like it is in the United States. But what we have done instead of respecting that place, respecting your stance, we have instead levied on you that you have to believe the same ways that we believe in these same areas. And so in doing that, we refuse to help and assist in an area that I think was a non-issue for the entire world. And so what we aim to do is, again, these foundational issues where we are seeking to preserve life, where we are seeking to protect life, and I think we can all agree on that. We can no longer stand behind these other laws that say that you must believe in every area that we do, or we will withhold help from you. So I think those are laws, and that's just an example that we have to revisit, that we have to revamp, that we have to ensure are supporting our stance in preserving life and not hindering us from doing that.
Thank you so much. That is really helpful. It's good to, and I think it is important to call out what the past has been, whatever it is, if I'm not sugarcoat it. And definitely I like the approach of, it's almost like how do we get to how I view it, but how do we get to the highest common denominator? Like life is a life. Should it matter that it's from this tribe or this, this demographic of the population or things like that? It's taking it back to basics, and I say taking it back to Mother Nature again. And I love what you said, Jade, about again stripping away the labels, because that is partly maybe one of the main reasons why Power to Our Mothers Foundation Africa, before we will speak about women, we will always speak about mothers, because in the context that we live in today, when you isolate, if you like, one group, then already somebody's back is up, especially when it comes to gender equality or gender equity. But it's like, but everyone has a mother. Surely everybody wants their mother to be okay, So I agree with you. It's how we reframe these things to be the most holistic as possible. Because it clearly looks like the approach is everything. It's not so much what you're doing, but the approach is everything. So I really appreciate that. The last two things that I mean, there's so much. We could be on here for 4 hours. Another issue that I would say is a burning one. It's more so for those in the diaspora, African Americans in the diaspora. They have this issue they're dealing with in the UK as well. What is your position, or what position will your administration take when it comes to looking at reparation for the transatlantic slave trade, the descendants of that, and wrapping that into the systematic change, addressing those injustices?
Yeah, well, I just want to thank you for ending on the easy question before we go. Listen, one of the things you talked about, the common denominator. We talk about it in the terms of getting to uncommon common ground. And a lot of our strategy has been to strip things down to the thing you can't argue about, right? So you strip it down to mothers, we strip it down to, has there been injustice or hasn't there? And if the answer is yes, you must now build in solutions to not just, you don't get the luxury of saying, well, it was the past. Let's just start here and start fresh. And we hear that a lot from our very non-racist, white friends, right? Who will say, let's just be friends. And so what we say is we don't have the luxury of kumbaya before we've done the work of reconciliation. And what we've done to find uncommon common ground is we've also avoided all of the hyperpolarized words and phrases that have been used. You won't actually hear us talk a lot about the word reparations. And we get people, tell us where you stand right now, say the word. And I'm like, this is the reason. We never actually get to the table. We talk about restitution. We talk about building in systemic success. And we tell people you cannot do that without coming from three angles. You got to deal with economic injustice. You have to deal with social injustice. And you have to deal with education reform. To deal with any of those, police brutality and not address disparity in our schools, you lose. To deal with economics and not address police brutality, criminal justice reform, you lose. So in our Breakthrough for Black America plan, we believe it's the broadest, most comprehensive plans in place to begin the process of dismantling the systemic injustices that existed. Now, a straightforward answer, I don't think cutting people one check is going to do the trick. Here's why. The amount that the checks have been calculated to be, I heard one calculation that was closer to like $30,000 a year for a set amount of years, another that was maybe around $250,000 total. I went to Northwestern University in Illinois. And when I went, it was expensive at $28,000 a year. It is now closer to $50,000 a year. If I wanted to send both of my kids to my alma mater, I could barely do it on that one reparations check. And since my ancestors who suffered through the initial brunt of this issue we're discussing do not get to benefit from me being repaid, I must also begin the process of paying it forward for generations to come. So that means my focus, more than being on one check or one plot of land, is on how do we redo systems that will benefit our people into the future. So we feel like we speak about it in a different way. We also have found ways that people can't really disagree, whether you're coming from the economic standpoint. If you invest, man, just that 13 trillion that Black businesses suffer from because of racism, you start investing in the Black businesses and Black ownership. If you have corporations taking 2% of their revenue and reinvesting it specifically in the Black community every year, you're going to see an increase of 3 to 4% in our GDP. That's an economic benefit to everybody in the nation. And we believe, lastly, like mothers understand, when you raise up and begin the process of equalizing the plight of the people who have been on the bottom, Everybody above that gets to benefit. Fair or not, everybody's going to benefit when we finally begin the process of restitution for African Americans. Claudelia, I know I hogged that, isn't it?
No, you just see me here in the background. Yes, 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 yes. The other piece, though, and I think this is a key word too, when we're avoiding the hyper politicized word of reparations, is that reinvestment. It is an investment. It's not just giving away, free money to make our hearts feel better.
Yeah.
It's valuing the contributions that these individuals make so much that we consider it an investment to work with them.
Yeah, and I would say the last piece of that, the reinvestment, the restitution, the reconciliation aspect of it. But when you just look at the history of the U.S., we've got to hold ourselves accountable. We paid reparations to Jews. We paid reparations to Japanese. You see, yet suddenly the discussion is so different for the group that was, vandalized, victimized for much longer and much earlier. So we've got a hypocrisy in our language. You see the same thing in even our politics. Whenever we're talking about programs that benefit the poor, we call it socialism. Whenever we talk about programs that benefit the wealthy, it's stimulus, it's investment. And we've had corporate welfare in many forms for many years in our nation. Yet we don't use those terms when we talk about bailing out already wealthy corporations who can eventually fend for themselves. Yet we leave people who are hurting and underserved out of that first round of stimulus. So you're looking at an era where, like you said it, Sister Angela, we're calling a thing what it is. Mm-hmm. We're speaking plainly. And we are also exposing the hypocrisy that has led to the disparities that we're talking about.
Amazing. Now, I can't leave without asking you, because of what you just touched on, what it brings out is this issue about the education system and the fact that, like you say, for certain groups, certain language and terminology is used, and for others, usually derogatory, and for others, it's the positive, it's the uplifting. What does your administration plan to do in terms of introducing into the syllabuses education that is more befitting, more about the heritage of African Americans?
Yeah, I enjoy very much riding in Uber and in taxi cabs because I have incredible conversations with the drivers who are often immigrants. And I was in, one of my drivers was from Nigeria, and we were debating this question. And he said, "You know what your problem is?" And I said, "Tell me, sir." And he said, "All they teach you all day long is slavery. That's all y'all know about who you are. It's slavery, racism, Jim Crow." He said, "That's all you get." And he said, "No matter," and he went on to give me a laundry list of all the ails we have simply because of the indoctrination. I have been blessed. Yeah. My father used to teach African history. And so no matter what we learned in school, he had the anecdote, right? We understood very early on where our origins in terms of Mother Africa is concerned. And so we never bought into the limited perception. So I talk a lot about in our education reform, reforming historical curriculum, not for the benefit of Black people only. But do you understand white teachers, Hispanic teachers, Asian teachers benefit from understanding the real origins of the people in their classroom? We talk about that cultural training, sensitivity training for teachers as well, who are asking for this, by the way. They don't want to be plopped down in an all Latino community that they don't live in, and they don't know the culture and the background of those kids. So you'll see that his history curriculum reform. Also, in general, our education curriculum is outdated. We're learning from curriculum that really was built for the 1940s, 1950s. And I know it's a generalization, but stereotypically, the African students come over here and wipe the floor, with the rest of us. And so I want to know what y'all are doing over there in every nation that, first of all, values education in a very different way than we value it in American society. And I think a lot of that devaluing has been because the educational experience in America has also been very different for African-American kids. And so the history curriculum is top on my list. And I think, again, it's going to be how we position that. It can't just be that you're doing this for African-Americans. It's because we all need an understanding that the same way we study the Asian dynasties and the European kingdoms, we should be understanding Africa apart from the one little sliver they give us, which is Egypt, which they don't even really call Africa, right? We learn about Egypt as its own thing. It's not associated with these other Black people. It's these very special group that they just happen to be on the continent, right? And so I would love to see a more well-rounded approach in our schools. We're investigating what we can really do at the federal level. But I think what's important is to have people at the top who support these types of initiatives going on the state and local level.
That is awesome. We definitely have people in GPAN US, because there's a US chapter, who would love to work with you on that.
Yay,
definitely looking at the education piece. Absolutely, because I love what you said, because it reminds me, and I'm actually speaking about this tomorrow. The fact is, yes, that history should be taught to everybody. Why? Because Black history is world history. There was Africa before anything else, you know. And the other thing that you may have heard said already is that, like you said, slavery, they teach us is the start of our history, but it interrupted our history. There were millennia before that, you know. And so sometimes where I really try and encourage people, despite, you know, the atrocities and everything, to have compassion is when we talk about ignorance, it's true ignorance, as in people don't know, like you say, the dynasties, they don't know the wealth, the majesty that we can't, so that they literally do not know. So you can't reproach somebody for not knowing, because it's not only the other communities don't know, we haven't been taught, so half of us don't know either.
Yeah, yeah. And so, I will say, I'm sorry to interrupt. There's one thing I would, so people understand what we've been saying is this is not an either or season. It's an and season. So out of, I can say wholeheartedly, we need to reform on a national level our historical curriculum. I also will say at the same time, Black communities, rise up, build your own schools, build your own banks, make your own financing hubs, teach your kids their history. My Jewish friends went to Jewish school, went to Hebrew school on Saturdays, right? On Fridays. And then my Asian friends, my Korean friends went to Korean school. So they went to school with me every day. And then on the weekends, they went and learned about their culture. So no matter what they heard in school, they were being informed of who they were as a people. And that is not, I believe, segregationist. I don't believe that it's causing people not to assimilate. I believe it gives them a better understanding and grounding of who they are and what their identity is, so that as they assimilate, they don't lose themselves. Their value is not caught up in the dominant value of the society. So if it is beautiful in American society to be, you know, blonde and blue-eyed and white, you don't even succumb to that, because you've already been taught beauty from a whole different standpoint. You know, and you can go natural one day and have a blonde streak the next, and none of it affects who you are, you know, as an African-American woman. You don't have to apologize for it, because you know who you are and you know your origins. I think that's huge.
Wow, that's so good.
That's so important. And sorry, Claudia, I was going to say to follow up with what Jade is saying. Yeah, I totally get the point about that. We do need, as the Black community, the African-American community needs its own structures, its own buildings and establishments. But I think that's, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I see that will only come or only be sustainable when some of the other systematic injustices have been eradicated. Otherwise, you have repeat of the Black history. Things, you know, just working so well one day, next minute they're gone.
There is.
And I say that from a place of, let's also have compassion for ourselves. We can be in our, what I see from my own personal experience is like in our desire, like almost desperation for us to progress as a people. it's one thing to take responsibility for ourselves, but then we lose complete compassion. It's like, no, we just have all or nothing. You know, either all it was down to the oppressor, or all, no, it was all our first. We sold ourselves out. And it's like how we find the middle ground, stop judging long enough so that we can actually get things done, you know?
Wow. I'll tell you personally, it blesses me to hear you say that. There's something different about an African woman saying it than when an African American woman says it. And what I'll tell you is, in our nation, there are these very heated discussions now, Angela, about whose fault it is. And there's also, I'm only voicing this for the first time, so I'm sure I'm not going to say it as eloquently as I should. I see almost an elitism arising in the woke community that almost demonizes, I'm trying to be careful, I'm trying to find the right words, that demonizes other people who are still in the learning process, still finding out.
Yes.
But I'm watching a very, what I believe, dangerous strain of elitism that could risk even more division amongst our community. You know, even I joke about the hair, even that thing. If you do that, you're colonized. We can't even talk to you, right? So they don't want a conversation with me. I'll have to wrap my head before we come in that room. You understand? And already we eliminate each other in ways that hurt us. Or some will say, "Why are you even doing politics? You can't help us from there." And it's like, wait a minute. You need somebody behind the doors here to understand the systems and pass along the blueprints. But I second what you said. Unless you have that systemic now addressing of issues, that systematic addressing of issues, you're just creating a false sense of what can really be sustained. Because if we're creating something new that we build, but it's still having to exist inside of the overall capitalist structure, right, in the US, then we're sort of setting ourselves up for failure. So that piece of education, financial literacy, understanding the systems you're in as you begin to build new systems that don't have your insecurities built into them. That's a whole other conversation right there.
Yeah. I mean, that was so beautifully put. Yeah. You say woke, or the conscious communities. There's so many ways in which as a people we're divided. And on the one hand, it can be very frustrating. On the other hand, I think we just need to recognize this is the damage, this is the effects that we are living of all the, so this is why I say how we find compassion, because there will be things that we need to hold up our hands for and say, you know what, this was us. But for me, it actually it doesn't serve any purpose if it's not either going to teach us something or going to move us forward. So we can have learning, but it's got to be constructive. If it's going to be part of the healing, we need that too. So it's like how we find this middle ground and not be so categoric, and definitive about things. As a diverse people across the whole world, there are many things that we need to come to find more sensitivity about, including the experience of the African on the continent and those in the diaspora. And even there, I don't know the kind of, I've been in and seen the kind of conversations where it's basically like an argument about, no, I've suffered more than you have. And it's like, hello, we're the same people, so just really trying to draw us back into there. So like I said, I genuinely could keep you speaking for 4 hours, but I appreciate you having me. So I think the last thing, it's been such an honor to have you both on the platform. So the last thing that I want to ask in a more general level is probably another easy question for you. Write down your campaign trail, but it's like, okay, elections are coming up. Literally, what is it that for what reason, or your main reason, should Africans and African Americans, let's say African Americans, Africans on the continent and African elsewhere in the diaspora, why should we or they lend you their support to make sure that you do become the next president and vice president of the USA?
Yeah. Claudia, you want to go first, or?
We'll defer to you, and then I'll answer after you, Madam.
Okay. So even in that way that you phrase the question, Angela, why should they? You know, I think it's even that question we ask, that's the issue. I believe that it's all leaders' jobs to really earn every vote. And we do that by trying to portray the biggest version of vision that we have for our nation. And then we must create the policies where every person can look and see in somewhere that they are served. I don't know if we've mentioned our website, operationrestoration2020.com, but we challenge people to, before you come for us, we always say, before you come at us with the negativity or assume the worst, spend just a few minutes on that website and see if you're served. And I think even people who live outside of the US, and we've got people, a guy from Colombia said, I wish I could vote, I'd vote for you. I've heard that from Australia, from Ireland. And what we're understanding is people are seeing a heart that wants to serve. And so they assume that if that heart is true, it will translate into their relationship with us in Ireland, into their relationship with us in Ghana. And so I believe that people should do their due diligence. And then when they do, that we'll earn their vote because they'll see a heart of service that wants to restore relationship, including our international relationships as well. Claudeliah?
Thank you so much.
I think what I would say, Sister Angela, and this is why I ultimately said yes to running with Jade. I do believe in her as a person, but I think what resonated with me even more was the vision. And so when I talk to others, when I work on the policies that we're putting together, when Jade and I are bouncing ideas off each other, it's really the vision that I think is the most important. And what I would encourage people, African American or not, women or not, to vote for is that the vision that we're laying forward as leaders, as servant leaders, resonates with what you want to see for the United States and for us being a leader internationally as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. If for some reason you're only joining us now, welcome, and we'll be signing off very shortly. I'm here with US presidential candidate, independent candidate Jade Simmons, and US 2020, by the way, vice presidential running mate Claudeliah Roze, who have joined us today. And we've had a fantastic discussion. The elections are looming, so I hope you have learned as much as I have. And what I will extract from what Jade said is go away and do your research. I see such similarities with when we're, if you like, pushing an agenda or promoting, okay, more mothers, more women step up. You must have heard it, I don't know how many times. I know I've heard it more times than I would like to. It's like, I'm not going to vote for her just because she's a woman. But nobody said you should vote for them just because they're a woman, or because they're black, or because they're Christian. It's like, do your homework. But of course, you know, it's good to support our own where we can, when we know that we need that cohesion, we need that collaboration. So I love the fact that you shared that and the vision. So we are wrapping up this show now. I will give each of you ladies a moment to just leave a parting message for our viewers, whether they're watching live or on replay.
Okay, Claudeliah, you go first this time.
Okay, let me just say I believe this was no coincidence at all. The people that I have met while serving in this position and seeking to serve at a higher position have changed my life irreparably. And this is one of those conversations that has done the same. I think what I would just say is, you know, internationally and nationally, we are at a great and pivotal moment. And I would just encourage our listeners to kind of search your hearts. Search your hearts. Don't look to do things the same way that they've always been done, because I think the world, the people, the environment in which we are living in is crying out for change, and we need to respond to that. Figure out how we're going to respond to So again, Sister Angela, thank you for this opportunity. And thank you for your listeners for just taking the time to tune in as well. I am looking forward to working with you.
Yeah.
I am sure this is not.
I know.
That we
This is our first official visit. Once you get in, let us know. We'll keep watch. One of our first.
Yes. And so thank you again. Blessings on you, blessings on your organization. And thank you again for this wonderful opportunity.
Yeah, I know we're supposed to always spend this time, selling ourselves in the last minute here. But if people have watched and they're not sold at this point, there's nothing more to say. What I will use the time doing is reiterating one of our prayers was that as we ran, that it would set a precedent and a model that as women, Black women, but as people, you don't have to wait around for an invitation to do the big thing you feel called to do. And if we can release even that outcome, right? People will say, well, we can't vote for you because you can't win. And we say, well, what does winning even mean anymore? If we're not putting the right solutions in, have you actually won? And I see that resonated, Angela, because you've probably been saying the same thing. What is it to profit to win the whole world and lose your soul in this season? And that's what my desire for everyone listening in and people who will watch this replay is that they take this not as just a session, with three powerhouse mother leaders here right now, but that they see this as a clarion call to their own leadership, that maybe they've been standing back out of fear or fear of not having man's approval. And what I always say is man, not meaning gender, just humans. Humans will never give you permission to disrupt their paradigms. So if you're waiting on that invitation or permission, it's not coming. So why not move out now and lean in? It will not be one president who changes the atmosphere and climate. It will be people rising up as individuals, leaning into the voids all around them that require a new level leadership. So I just encourage you all to do that. If you do want to learn more, OperationRestoration2020.com. We appreciate the love and support that has started to come in from different nations in Africa, from different places across the world. And we take that as a sign that we have stayed standing long enough to have our vision and our hearts recognized for what they really are. So thank you again, Sister Angela, for having us on, daring to have these rebels on, and also for you daring it to lean into the void that you are looking to fill as well. Thank you.
You are so welcome, and my pleasure. And I'm sure, judging by the comments, it has been a really good session for other people to be exposed to you, have their own questions. So thank you so much. And the reason that the thing that really touched my heart, because it just so syncs with me, is the fact that basically don't delay. Don't think that you have to wait to run and because the only time you're ready is when you're going to win. No, somebody has to open the door. Like somebody has to go first, and usually the first person, they're not going to hit it just like that. I'm not the first woman to say that I'm going to run for presidency in Ghana. No, there are others. But with each one, you build a momentum. You send the signal to say, oh, maybe it's a better time to try now. That's what signals the change in the climate, that, okay, maybe it didn't work before, but maybe this time, or maybe next time. But all those people matter. Nobody's just going to get up one day and then accomplish this thing overnight. It doesn't happen, not in reality. So thank you so much for saying that, because in encouraging our sisters, it's like, and I love absolutely, and I would want to reaffirm what you say in terms of, so yeah, in my own words, you may not feel it's within your gift to run to head a nation, but you are already a leader. Perhaps you just haven't identified yet, or identified with that yet. So think about it. Where are you leading in your life right now? What more can you do? Because believe me, we need more as a collective. We all need more. And actually, this goes for humans. Like, we all need to take self-responsibility.
Right.
But as we're speaking about the women, because as the majority, collectively, we need to really push that momentum along, and we need to step up, because that will help the men as well. That will bring the balance and the harmony we are seeking. So wherever you are in the world, wishing you a good rest of the day. On behalf of Global Pan-Africanism Network and Power to Our Mothers Foundation Africa, I thank you again, Jade Simmons and Claudeliah Roze, for joining us. And whatever way we can assist you, partner with you, help you in the future, even if, let's just say, even if it's not this time around for you, but it's like the work is now, now nothing is lost. Right. So that's whatever way we can assist you, we will do that. So thank you so much. And for everybody else, see you next week. Goodbye.
Thank you.